The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
What happens when a smug TV host goes head-to-head with a governor who looks like he just misplaced his car keys? You get Greg Gutfeld tearing Tim Walz apart like a paper doll caught in a hurricane. From failed policies to awkward political performances, Gutfeld turns Minnesota's leadership into pure comedy chaos. A wrecking show that feels more like a demolition derby than any serious debate. Don't blink, because this roast blazes hotter than Walz's icy approval ratings, and every moment lands with explosive force.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
Oh, Tim Walz. If political leadership were a buffet, he'd be the lukewarm mashed potatoes no one ordered but somehow got scooped onto the plate anyway. Bland, pointless, and just sitting there, taking up space. Then Greg Gutfeld storms in, wielding sarcasm like a chainsaw in a fireworks factory, slicing through Walz's blunders with the wild energy of a comedian on a mission. This isn't leadership. It's performance art gone terribly wrong, like finger painting with spoiled mayonnaise. It's chaotic, cringeworthy, and absolutely impossible to forget.
He exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, 0.2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
If you're loving this takedown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's be real. Watching Tim Walz run Minnesota is like watching a substitute teacher struggle to control a classroom full of hyperactive raccoons. He talks like someone who skimmed Leadership for Dummies once and decided that was all the wisdom he'd ever need. And his execution, absolutely flawless. But only if the goal was to turn the land of 10,000 lakes into the land of 10,000 catastrophes.
Saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to try. Roasting Tim Walz is like dunking on someone who showed up to a job interview wearing Crocs and a blindfold. It's as if Walz stepped onto the debate stage armed with nothing but a kazoo and a whiteboard covered in the word feelings. He practically invited it, handing Gutfeld a roast platter labeled extra crispy and leaning in to whisper, "Go for the kill." At this stage, it's beyond satire. It's full-blown competitive sarcasm, and Walz came prepared with nothing but glitter, glue, and a sad little participation ribbon.
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy. It's strange
You know,
times.
he called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, my house is being surrounded by people with American flags. I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He said, I think they're going to attack me. This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, how do you know? There were about 15,000. He said, could you put out a word like that I'm your friend? I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before Truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement. He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side. I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Let's start with the economy. Tim Walz looked at inflation, unemployment, and businesses fleeing the state and thought the solution was more taxes. Tax the air, tax the smiles, maybe even tax the thought of moving to South Dakota. Companies are escaping Minnesota like it's a haunted house built from climate mandates and social justice slideshows. And then Gutfeld ripped through Walz's economic blunders like a raccoon tearing open a compost bin. He practically shouted, how do you make California look like a capitalist paradise in comparison? Because under Walz, the only things growing are government paperwork and the pounding headaches of the middle class. Now on to crime. Tim Walz treats public safety the way a toddler treats matches. Optimistic, clueless, and destined to end in sirens. His grand strategy, blame society, hold hands, and hope criminals are inspired by interpretive dance. It's like handing out scented candles in the middle of a burning building.
On the same bad cocaine, but Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus.
He doesn't even need makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? Yeah. I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld is out here turning crime statistics into comedy gold. He practically held up a Minnesota map with "Here be carjackings" stamped right over the Twin Cities. He compared Walz's crime plan to a mall cop trying to stop a riot using a kazoo and a clipboard. If Walz were running national security, we'd all be brushing up on our Russian by next week. Then came education, with a sparkling, chaotic dumpster fire. Walz, once a teacher himself, somehow decided classrooms should become workshops of woke word salad. Forget math and science. Now students are graded on spotting microaggressions and building safe spaces out of popsicle sticks. Gutfeld didn't just mock it, he unleashed. He joked that the only test students are passing these days is How to Be Offended 101. Under Walz, schools don't look like centers of learning anymore. They look like stages for terrible performance art. Detention? Gone. Now it's all participation trophies and TikTok therapy sessions.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Walz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Walz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies. And Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the difference?
And let's not forget the COVID policies. Tim Walz acted like the pandemic was his grand audition for America's next top authoritarian. Shut down everything, drag bar owners to court, fine churches. But protests? Oh, those were magically essential. Apparently, the virus had a political filter. Who could have guessed? Gutfeld devoured that hypocrisy, reminding everyone how Walz shut down Grandma's bingo night, but threw the streets wide open for protests, as long as there was at least one Marxist chant and a papier-mâché puppet in sight. That wasn't public health. It was political theater with a clipboard. And then came the budget surplus, a mountain of extra cash so massive even Walz couldn't pretend it didn't exist. But instead of returning it to the taxpayers, the very people who earned it, he spent it like monopoly money at a government garage sale. More bureaucracy, more diversity consultants, and maybe even a taxpayer-funded mural of himself staring dramatically into the distance.
says that Walz lost, but one of them at Politico says it's like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every...
Gutfeld nearly collapsed from the sheer irony. He joked, Walz blowing a surplus is like handing a toddler a credit card and telling him to only buy the essentials. Sure, Tim, because obviously the Department of Overregulation needed a shiny new espresso machine and an executive yoga retreat in the name of gender equity and bureaucracy. Walz has turned red tape into a full contact sport. In Minnesota, you can't even run a lemonade stand without 14 permits, a background check, and a pronoun declaration. It's Soviet-style governance with slicker branding and even worse results. Gutfeld captured it perfectly, Walz twisting and tumbling through policy like he's auditioning for bureaucratic gymnastics, each move more ridiculous than the last. And then there's his odd fascination with Gavin Newsom. Walz clings to California's governor like a starstruck fan, desperate to make Minneapolis into San Francisco's colder, clumsier cousin.
Tim Walz vomits more nonsense.
I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Maybe it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. This is a weak, cruel man that takes it out and punches down on people.
Wow. Oh. Jamie.
What a
Painful,
douchebag,
huh?
Greg. That was absolutely painful. He was the keynote speaker at this conference. Can you imagine having to watch more of that?
He watches Gavin Newsom burn down California like a scented candle made of bad policy and thinks, perfect, now let's add frostbite and subtract jobs. It's the West Coast disaster script, only this time performed in snow boots, with higher taxes and fewer opportunities. Gutfeld went straight for the jugular, saying, if Gavin Newsom is a shampoo ad with the ego of a Bond villain, then Tim Walz is the understudy who wandered in halfway through and started improvising in Pig Latin. Walz struts around like the confused offspring of Bernie Sanders and a malfunctioning traffic light, pretending to be a progressive savior while tripping over every agency he touches. And don't even start on transportation. He pushed a multi-million-dollar bullet train that might finally arrive around the same time dinosaurs make their comeback. Meanwhile, Minnesota's roads look like a post-apocalyptic Mario Kart track, with drivers praying their cars survive another day. But Walz? He's too busy selling his fantasy train dreams like he's auditioning for Hogwarts, while real infrastructure crumbles faster than gluten-free toast.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath, you don't want to see.
And Gutfeld rolled his eyes so hard they practically registered on the Richter scale. The sarcasm was so dense it deserved its own zip code. Brilliant plan, Tim. Let's toss common sense in the trash and pour billions into Elon Musk fanfiction on rails. Because nothing screams fiscal genius like a bullet train to nowhere, slower than a DMV line, and about as useful as a solar-powered flashlight in January. Then came Walz's media appearances. Picture a man cosplaying as a capable leader while speaking with all the clarity of a dial-up modem underwater. He drones in endless circles like a GPS, permanently stuck on recalculating. Somewhere off stage, his advisors are waving flashcards and shooting flares, desperate for him to hit a single coherent point. Gutfeld tore it apart like a drunken poet at open mic night. Watching Walz explain policy is like watching a raccoon try Morse code with oven mitts. Chaotic, confusing, and somehow convinced he nailed it. It's not just awkward, it's verbal gymnastics nobody asked to see.
Meanwhile, Kamala's VP, Tim Walz, is being accused of lying about his rank, which is called stolen valor. But in Walz's defense in Minneapolis, stealing is legal. But misrepresenting your past for political gain? I don't see that as a problem, said one woman.
And when the pressure hits, Tim Walz doesn't just pivot, he pirouettes like a ballerina fueled by 5 Red Bulls and a subscription to The Atlantic. Ask him about crime skyrocketing across Minnesota, and suddenly he's rambling about how bike lanes will magically reduce felonies. Bring up the economy circling the drain, and he launches into a sermon on gender-neutral parking lots and the emotional toll of asphalt management. This isn't leadership, it's interpretive policy theater, complete with TED-style talks on feelings and PowerPoints about healing communities with ukulele circles. Gutfeld shredded it perfectly. Walz is basically a Magic 8 ball in orthopedic shoes. Shake him, and the answer is always some muddled jargon about intersectional frameworks or equity gardening. And then there's the branding. Walz struts around like a down-home farm dad, but his idea of roughing it is sipping almond milk without a paper straw. He's the guy who shows up to a tailgate with kombucha, asking if the brisket is locally sourced. Gutfeld roasted him with surgical precision, saying Walz is about as folksy as tofu at a monster truck rally. Nothing screams working class hero like quoting Noam Chomsky in a fleece vest.
Video of the day, and he's got a very weird way of greeting his wife of 30 years. Roll it. I want to see this in slow motion. You'll see Walz extends his hand to his wife. She grabs it. They shake. He pulls her close and then goes in for that non-friction hug, all the while still shaking her hand. I wish there was a word to describe that. Oh, yeah, weird. I've seen warmer embraces between Chris Christie and a salad.
Minnesota's rural towns are screaming like someone stuck on hold trying to cancel dial-up in 2025. They wanted a leader who understood tractors, hard work, maybe a church potluck or two. Instead, they got Tim Walz, a man who seems to think greater Minnesota starts at the edge of a bike lane and ends where the kombucha taps run dry. This isn't leadership, it's lifestyle branding loaded with buzzwords. He governs like he's live streaming a TED Talk called Empathy Through Bureaucracy. Gutfeld's knockout line? He crowned him the IKEA governor. Comes in a box, half the screws missing, assembly required. And by the end, you're crying over a wobbly mess, wondering if you've built a metaphor. He's right. Walz treats policy like a Pinterest board, convinced governing is just hashtags, oat milk, and interpretive dance. Gutfeld saw through it all with X-ray precision. Every bloated bill, every word salad speech, every sanctimonious sermon parading as leadership. He shredded it with sarcasm sharp enough to cut steel, turning Walz's oatmeal-flavored brand of governance into a soggy pile of mediocrity. The saddest part? Walz probably walked away thinking it was a TED Talk tribute. Minnesota deserves more than a glorified group project in khakis. And Gutfeld, with punchlines sharper than a DMV pencil, reminded the nation that behind the fleece vest and passive-aggressive grin sits a governor following expired IKEA instructions. Confused, underwhelming, and missing half the screws.